Chapter 91, 90, I will share half of my headphones with you. The second day of the college entrance examination, June 8. Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan got up early, finished breakfast, and headed to the school together. Together, they would take a bus to the test site for the practical assessment, a forest brimming with primal nature. This forest was located on the outskirts of Nanjiang province. It was desolate and uninhabited, with numerous wild animals and few human visitors. It was very suitable for use as a practical assessment test site. Outside the two families' homes, Lin's father and mother, Shen's father and mother, all four parents got up early to see their children off. Take this bag of bread. And don't forget the biscuits. Remember this bottle of sports drink. And this pack of jerky. Bring more food, eat well before entering the forest. That way, once you're inside, you won't have to rush to find food and can first observe the terrain. Zhang Wangzhen opened the zipper of Lin Zikan's backpack and, while speaking, kept stuffing food into it. Feeling his backpack getting heavier and heavier, Lin Zikan hurriedly said, "Mom, that's enough, I can't finish all that. Isn't Han Han there to eat it too? Han Han's backpack is full as well. That's not a problem, if you can't finish it, you can eat it after the exams when you'll probably be hungry." Zhang Wangzhen was very thorough, fearing the children would get terribly hungry. On the other side, Su Meng was also incessantly nagging Shen Qinghan, reminding her, "Qinghan, the forest is full of dangers. Don't risk it just to get a high score. Your safety comes first, understand?" "I understand, Mom." Shen Qinghan obediently nodded her head. Hearing this, Zhang Wangzhen, who was beside her, said to Su Meng with a smile, "Don't worry, they've been assigned the same test entrance. With Xiao Chen around, he'll surely protect Qinghan well." Of course, of course." Su Meng replied with a smile. After saying that, she looked at Lin Zikan with a gentle smile and said, "Xiao Chen, I'm entrusting Qinghan to you. After the college entrance exams, Aunt Meng will buy you and Qinghan the latest model of the fruit phone, as a gift for your high school graduation. Then I'll thank Aunt Meng in advance." Lin Zikan smiled and didn't bother being formal with Su Meng. The two families had been close for many years and had long considered each other family. Being too polite would actually seem distant. "Dad, Mom, Aunt Meng, Uncle Yat, we're leaving. Dad, Mom, Aunt Xin, Uncle Sheng, goodbye." The two waved to the four parents to say farewell and quickly left with their backpacks, walking briskly towards the school. By the time they arrived at the school, all 10 martial arts classes in their senior year had already lined up on the playground. Seeing this, Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan jogged to the end of the line for Class 1 of the senior year. About half an hour later, the buses responsible for transporting the examinees to the practical assessment site arrived. There were 10 in total, with one bus for each class. Soon, all examinees were on the buses. Nearly 500 martial arts seniors from Shanghai High School set off for the practical assessment site. At the same time, high schools in various cities across Nanjiang province were also organizing their students to head to the test sites. The numbers were not large. A larger, more prominent high school had only a few hundred martial arts students per grade. A smaller, average high school might just have one martial arts class per grade, meaning only a few dozen martial arts students. As such, even in Nanjiang province, which is known for a large number of college entrance examinees, the number of martial arts students participating in the exams this year did not exceed 100,000. The rest of the several 100,000 examinees were all humanities, arts, technical students, etc. After all, those who practiced martial arts were still a minority. After all, on the path of martial arts cultivation, if one couldn't become a genetic integrator or a mechanically modified human in the end, their potential would indeed be lower than that of humanities students. The ones who achieve the best success often open martial arts schools and widely recruit disciples. For those slightly less successful, they become martial arts teachers in high schools after passing exams, or take up positions in related security departments. Those with even less success work at martial arts schools. For academic students, the range of job prospects after graduation is much wider. Education, medical services, finance, design, networking, etc., all offer job positions. It's such a pity, Han Han, if only I had the same examination hall entrance as you, then I could have company and also cling to Zi Chen's coattails at the same time. Just thinking about it feels awesome. In the car, Li Chuxin leaned over the back of the seat, looking at Shen Qinghan in the rear seat as she spoke. He Yu, sitting next to Li Chuxin, was immediately displeased upon hearing this, grumbling. What do you mean by that? Are my coattails not thick enough? Isn't it good enough to be in the same examination hall entrance with me? Being on a team with me would also be cool, get it? Teaming up with a straight guy like you is boring. Li Chuxin expressed her disdain with her face. He Yu was unconvinced and retorted, what straight guy? I call this genuine and unaffected. Seeing the two bicker at the drop of a hat, Shen Qinghan found it quite amusing and silently watched the show with a smile. Next to her, Lin Zikin was wearing headphones and watching news videos on his phone. He stayed informed on social issues and current affairs from all aspects. Capital University prodigy, successfully integrates the Shadow Night Cat gene, breaking the school's record for youngest triple gene fusee winner. Mechanical genius girl, right eye successfully implanted with the latest generation supercomputing chip, needs only a glance to calculate a target's various data, comparable to fiery golden eyes. At 4 a.m. today, a minor earthquake occurred in Shanghai City. A pair of lovers with keen senses felt the significant tremors, got so scared that they didn't even bother to get dressed, and ran out of their home naked, shouting for residents to flee. In the video, a censor-barred couple caught in adultery was covering their privates and shouting by the roadside about an earthquake, telling everyone to run. Then, an old lady quickly rushed out of the house, the woman's mother-in-law, wielding a broom and beating the two while cursing, "My son works hard on the construction site every day and sends money home. How dare you sneak in a man for an affair in the middle of the night, acting as if I, your mother-in-law, don't exist. I'll beat you to death. You adulterer and hussy." While the news anchor reported the news with a serious demeanor, the top of the video was continuously flashing with barrage comments. The civil engineer brother must be crying. No problem, as long as the kid is his own. Haha, though they were having an affair, they still showed responsibility. Human nature is complex. In some ways, they are the bad guys, but in others, they can be the good ones. Who said heroes can only stand in the light? A hero can also stand there naked. Lin Zikin glanced over these comments and found them funny, but he didn't laugh. Instead, he slightly furrowed his brows. This seems to be the second noticeable earthquake in Shanghai City this year. Isn't this a bit too frequent? Theoretically, given Shanghai City's geographical location, having one noticeable earthquake over several years would be considered a lot. I hope I'm just overthinking it, please, let there not be a massive earthquake. Lin Zikin thought to himself. On the other side, Shen Qinghan's gaze shifted from He Yu and Li Chuxin in front to Lin Zikin beside her. Seeing him quietly watching the news, she couldn't help but feel moved. Xiao Chen is so quiet, not like other boys his age who are noisy and boisterous. Having such an almost perfect childhood friend must mean I saved the earth in my past life. I'm so lucky. With these thoughts, a satisfied smile spread across Shen Qinghan's lips. Lin Zikin noticed her gaze and thought she wanted to see the news on his phone, so he took off one earphone and offered it to her. Want to watch together? Sure. Shen Qinghan laughed as she accepted the earphone, brushing the hair by her ear aside and tucking the earphone in. Then, she skillfully leaned a little, intimately resting her shoulder against Lin Zikin's, tilting her head to watch the news video on the phone with him. P.S. Bowing for votes, seek monthly tickets and recommendations. Chapter 92-91, Practical Assessment of the Chicken Eating Mode. About 2 hours later, the bus that Lin Zikin was on finally arrived at the forest that served as the exam venue. Shen Qinghan, who had been watching news videos with earphones, was now sweetly asleep on Lin Zikin's shoulder. She was sleeping so deeply that drool was leaking out. Be it wetting the bed or drooling, it seems she has always been overabundant with liquids. Lin Zikin shook his head helplessly, took a tissue out of his backpack, and wiped off the drool at the corner of Shen Qinghan's mouth. Then he gently poked her cheek with his finger and softly called, "Han Han, we've arrived at the exam site, wake up. We're here." Shen Qinghan woke up groggily, her eyes still sleepy. Soon, everyone got off the bus, and as soon as they disembarked, they heard someone shouting through a megaphone. "Those for Entrance 29, come this way. Entrance 3, over here. Candidates for Entrance 18, gather over here. Entrance 78 is right here." The candidates coming for the practical assessment were numerous, nearly 100,000. Having just one entrance clearly wouldn't do. To scatter the candidates into the forest and achieve a better assessment outcome, the educational department had specially set up 100 entrances to the forest. It didn't take long for the candidates to locate their respective entrance groups according to the announcements. Then, they left the transfer station in groups, heading to their designated entrance points. Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan were assigned to the same entrance point. Both were for Entrance 9, finding their group, they left the transfer station by bus. In less than 10 minutes, the bus arrived at the destination and stopped. Once Lin Zikin got off the bus, he saw that Entrance 9 was already teeming with people. At a glance, there were at least several hundred candidates. Apart from the candidates, there were also about a dozen vendors setting up stalls selling food. In the middle of this wilderness, there are actually people setting up stalls to sell food. Shen Qinghan was surprised. Lin Zikin explained, "It's normal, with nearly 1,000 candidates at each entrance point. Setting up for a few hours here could likely earn them thousands." A puzzled look appeared on Shen Qinghan's face, but logically speaking, the educational department shouldn't allow these vendors to come in, right? Lin Zikin smiled, "Who knows?" Shen Qinghan quickly had another question, "So many people are buying food at these stalls. It's the college entrance exam, aren't they afraid of getting a bad stomach? The food these vendors are selling is definitely hygienic, otherwise, the relevant personnel would not dare let them in to sell food." Lin Zikin added. After finishing, he quickly said, "Let's go find a less crowded spot to sit down and eat something to fill our stomachs." "Okay." Shen Qinghan agreed. Before long, they found a large tree, randomly chose a couple of rocks to sit on as chairs, and started eating the food they had brought from home while chatting casually. In their idle moments, Lin Zikin, using his extraordinary sensory perception, kept listening to the conversations of other candidates nearby. Some candidates felt nervous. Some were excited. Some were happy, glad to have acquaintances at this entrance point, so they wouldn't feel lonely entering the forest later. Others noticed Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan, attracted by their good looks, whispering how handsome and pretty they were. About 10 minutes passed like this. The person in charge of the entrance point stepped onto the platform and emphasized the rules of the practical assessment to the candidates present. He talked for a good half an hour or more. Lin Zikin summed up his points, which were roughly as follows. Many scorecards are placed throughout the forest, with each card displaying a number indicating the number of points it is worth. These scorecards are placed in tricky positions like treetops, cliff edges, or on fierce animals such as bears, tigers, rhinos, crocodiles, pythons, and on a few exotic beasts deeper in the forest. Near each fierce animal and exotic beast, there are safety officers on guard, ready to rescue candidates who challenge these beings and then run into danger. The exotic beasts in the deepest parts of the forest are intended for the geniuses to earn points, Ordinary candidates are advised not to join in, to avoid accidents. Ordinary candidates are too weak to contend with exotic beasts and might die at their jaws before safety officers could rescue them. The results of the practical assessment are based on the points individuals earn. Additionally, candidates' other abilities demonstrated during the 7-day period will be observed through cameras, for example, leadership skills. Nearly 100,000 candidates are taking part in the practical assessment. But the total value of the scorecards is only 50,000, meaning more than half of the candidates will not score any points. The practical assessment encourages both cooperation and competition. Candidates can work together to earn points and then distribute the scorecards among teammates according to contribution, but on the other hand, they can also directly steal scorecards from others. There are cameras and safety officers all around the forest. If you encounter danger, you can seek help, but the price is immediate elimination. Candidates, the rules for this practical assessment are as stated. In 1 hour, we will enter the forest and begin the assessment. Prepare well, said the entrance points official, before promptly leaving the stage. No sooner had the official left than a fat candidate began to shout. My dad is a senior executive at the Nangwon City branch of the Mech God Group. Is there any brainiac who can guide me after the assessment starts? There will be a handsome reward. I'll take you. I'm a top student from Changzhou No. 1 Middle School's genius class. I guarantee to carry you to the top. There was a top student responding to the fat examinee. Unfortunately, before the two could exchange contacts, they were warned by the teaching staff on site. They were told that they couldn't be so blatant. If they wanted to form teams, they should do it quietly and privately. On the other side, Lin Zikin was chatting and eating with Shen Qinghan when a few students from their school approached him. They asked if he could take them along when they entered the forest later on. Lin Zikin didn't even have to think before he rejected their request. The reason for refusal was simple: he wasn't going to share any of the scoring cards he collected along the way with anyone else. Upon hearing this, they gave up on the idea of clinging to his coattails. Lin Zikin didn't pay attention to these few and continued to chat and eat with Shen Qinghan. About 20 minutes passed. A muscular student walked up to them and stopped, asking politely, "Classmate, I'm feeling a bit hungry now, but I didn't bring any food with me. I see you guys seem to have a lot of food in your bags, could you sell me some?" "No need for money, just take it," Lin Zikin said and took out a loaf of bread and a pack of biscuits from his bag, tossing them casually to the student. After all, there was so much food in the bag that he couldn't finish it himself, giving some away wouldn't hurt. "It's embarrassing to freeload off you guys like this. How about this? In return, once we enter the forest, I'll team up with you two and help you score," the student offered confidently, introducing himself. "By the way, my name is Hong Junping, a student from Jianzhen No. 1 Middle School's rocket class. I can run 100 meters in 6 seconds and lift a 750 kilograms barbell with one hand. Once we're in the forest, I can at least get you 5 points." Lin Zikin declined politely, "Thank you for the offer, but it's not necessary." The boy was stunned, not expecting to be rejected. Moments later, he recovered and smiled awkwardly. "I see, well then, bro, thanks for the bread and biscuits," and turned to leave. Once the boy had walked some distance away, Shen Qinghan couldn't help but comment, "He's weird. There are so many food stalls around, but instead of buying from them, he came specifically to us. The old man's love for wine is not just about wine. It's because we have a stunningly beautiful girl here," Lin Zikin said with a smile. He knew very well that the boy had approached them to hit on Shen Qinghan. Seeing how beautiful Shen Qinghan was, he wanted to get to know her and then came up with a poor excuse to team up. "Ah? So he was hitting on me? That's so sly," Shen Qinghan said, realizing only after Lin Zikin explained. At this moment, a girl nearby chimed in with a smile, "That's not necessarily the case, maybe the boy came over because he saw a handsome guy here." Lin Zikin. The girl walked over and struck up a conversation with Lin Zikan. My name is Zhou Wenjuan, a student from Changzhou No. 1 Middle School's genius class. I think you're really handsome, can we add each other on WeChat? I don't use WeChat. Then, QQ. I don't use QQ either. Lin Zikan declined gently again, not interested in adding this strange girl to his contacts. Getting the hint, the girl didn't linger any longer and walked away. In the following time, all the candidates at the entry point were eating. If they didn't eat now, they would have nothing to eat once they entered the forest. Eat as much as possible while it's possible, so that even if there's nothing to eat for the whole day later, they could still get through it effortlessly. While eating, most of the candidates were constantly observing the others around them. They were trying to distinguish which were the top students and which were the underachievers, so they could form appropriate strategies for the upcoming practical assessment. If they encountered top students, they would avoid them for fear of having their scoring cards snatched away. Conversely, if they ran into underachievers, they would go for their scoring cards. The game was all about bullying the weak and fearing the strong. In the meantime, the Tianzhen City student who had been previously rejected by Lin Zikan for teaming up came over again to ask. This time, he didn't ask Lin Zikan but instead went to ask Shen Qinghan. However, Shen Qinghan bluntly refused, stating, I only team up with him. I won't team up with other guys. You should go talk to other girls. Don't get me wrong, I'm not hitting on you. I just don't like owing people, the boy tried to clarify. I took your bread and biscuits for free earlier and thought about helping you out in the forest as a way to repay for that. Since you don't need it, let's leave it at that, he said, and then left awkwardly. He hadn't expected to be rejected again, and so bluntly at that. He muttered to himself that these two didn't know the chance they were missing and how foolish they were. P.S. Bowls out, asking for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Chapter 93, 92, The Road Narrows, Classmate. Half an hour later, the real combat assessment began. The perpetually closed number 9 entrance finally, at this moment, slowly opened up. The entrance was large, estimated to be nearly 50 meters wide. At the supervisor's command, hundreds of candidates instantly filed in, scrambling to rush into the forest to seize the initiative. Lin Zikan wasn't in a hurry at all. He waited until everyone had rushed in and the entrance was no longer crowded, then leisurely entered with Shen Qinghan. Xiao Chen, there's actually a map inside the forest, and even signposts. Shen Qinghan looked around the environment and discovered that there was a map sign erected ahead. And each path had signposts indicating the distance to the deepest part of the forest. There was also a sentence highlighted in red as a warning, saying that the deeper into the forest, the more dangerous it gets, and to proceed according to one's capability. The purpose of the college entrance exam is to select, not to eliminate through life and death situations. Having maps and signposts is normal, otherwise, there would likely be numerous casualties. After saying this, Lin Zikan stepped forward to glance at the map and signposts, then casually chose a path and went deeper into the forest with Shen Qinghan. All along the way, he was carefully observing the surrounding environment. Nearly every 100 meters, one could see a surveillance camera. As for the safety officers, one could see one every 500 meters. One could say that unless someone acted recklessly, this real combat assessment had no dangers whatsoever. After walking about 2 kilometers, Lin Zikan, with the effect of his biometric attributes Eyes of the Sky, noticed a scorecard on a large tree ahead. It was a 1-point card, tied up with rope, hanging in a position more than 10 meters high. Without paying careful attention, it would be very difficult to spot. Han, there's a scorecard on that tree up ahead. Can you see it in that position? I see it. There really is one. You climb up and get the card down. For Lin Zikan, this real combat assessment was meaningless, he could pass it with his eyes closed. Therefore, he planned to let Shen Qinghan take action during the following 7 days, to train her wilderness survival skills. He, on the other hand, was responsible for being Shen Qinghan's Mr. Yao, stepping in to help her solve problems she couldn't handle on her own. About this matter, the two had already agreed on before entering the forest. Soon, Shen Qinghan arrived at the base of that tree. She used her hands and feet to quickly climb up and in just a short time, successfully fetched the scorecard that was hung more than 10 meters high. Xiao Chen, am I awesome or what? After coming down from the tree, Shen Qinghan immediately returned to Lin Zikin's side and proudly said. From climbing up to coming down, she took less than a minute, with exceptionally good climbing skills. Awesome! Lin Zikin gave her a thumbs up. After chatting for a few moments on the spot, the two continued their journey deeper into the forest. Lin Zikin acted as the radar, telling Shen Qinghan where the scorecards were so she could fetch them. Working together in this manner for half a day, they easily scored 12 points. Several safety officers along the way were astonished by their performance. No matter how well hidden the scorecards were, the pair could retrieve them as easily as if reaching into a bag, almost as if they had X-ray vision. In the blink of an eye. It was already afternoon. Just as the two were about to look for something to eat, the sky suddenly darkened. Looking up, they saw rain was coming. Not far away, there was a cluster of banana trees, so they ran over there, tearing off banana leaves to make a rain shelter while also picking some bananas to eat. Just as the rain shelter was finished, the downpour started, and the large raindrops beat against the banana leaves with a pattering sound. We're really lucky to have set up the rain shelter just before it started to rain. Shen Qinghan stood under the shelter, eating a banana and speaking. The heavy rain didn't last long, stopping in less than half an hour. Seeing that it was getting close to evening, Lin Zikin urged Shen Qinghan to go out and look for food and water, saying they needed to find it before dark, otherwise, they would go hungry tonight. Shen Qinghan patted her chest and said, "Leave it to me. You have always taken care of me before, but this week it's my turn to take good care of you." After the rain, puddles were everywhere on the ground. And before long, Shen Qinghan's shoes and the bottom of her trousers were wet. But strangely, she didn't feel uncomfortable, rather, she found the wetness somewhat pleasant. She knew that this was the effect of her uncultivated superpower. I'm very compatible with water, feeling comfortable whenever I come into contact with it. Can these fruits be eaten? Shen Qinghan found many wild fruits in a bush, the size of grapes, emerald in color and hard to the touch. Uncertain if they were edible, she turned and asked Lin Zikin. Lin Zikin refused to answer the question, smiling and saying, "We agreed you'd take care of me, so I can't help you with this." "All right then, I'll try it myself." After Shen Qinghan spoke, she picked a relatively ripe fruit and hesitantly bit into it. The next second, her eyebrows furrowed tightly, and she spat out the fruit with a grimace, complaining about its sourness. In the blink of an eye, the sky had darkened, and night had fallen. Shen Qinghan made a bed from banana leaves, secured it to a tree with vines, and spent the night there with Lin Zikin. She wanted to take off her pants to sleep, but since Lin Zikin was right beside her, it was inconvenient, so she chose to trust that she wouldn't wet the bed during the night. The next day dawned dimly. Lin Zikin woke up to find Shen Qinghan lying on top of him, sleeping sweetly with drool at the corner of her mouth, some on his neck. "At least I didn't wet myself." Lin Zikin glanced at Shen Qinghan's lower body, saw her pants were dry, and heaved a sigh of relief. Soon after, Shen Qinghan woke up as well. The two of them climbed down from the tree and continued deeper into the forest. Like the day before, Lin Zikin acted as a radar, pointing out the locations of scorecards for Shen Qinghan to collect. Around noon, they ran into someone familiar on the path. It was the top student from Jianzhen City who had tried to hit on Shen Qinghan yesterday under the pretense of teaming up. Seeing the two, the male student expressed surprise. "What a coincidence! Quite a coincidence!" Lin Zikin politely responded to him. The boy quickly turned his attention to Shen Qinghan beside him, and after just one more look, his heart thumped wildly, as if it would explode. She's too pretty. She's too cute. If he didn't get to know her today, he would surely regret it in the future. Thinking this, the male student took out more than 20 scorecards from his pocket, laid them out in front of Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan, and earnestly said, "I am someone who repays even the smallest debt of gratitude with a wellspring of kindness. The bread and cookies you gave me yesterday, I've kept them in mind. You might think it's nothing, but personally, if I can't repay kindness, it bothers me. Really, just let me take you too. And we'll divide the scorecards we collect evenly among the three of us. The practical exam isn't too important in the martial arts college entrance exam, it's enough to just pass. The written exam is the same, passing is enough. What's really important are the physical tests that were already completed, and the final adaptability test. That's why this top student from Jianzhen City was willing to share the scorecards evenly." Lin Zikan glanced at the scorecards in the other's hand. There were 28 in total. That was far more than the ones he and Shen Qinghan had together, almost 3 times as many. In the outer area they were now, with not many scorecards placed around, it was impossible for one person to collect so many in a day's time. This top student from Jianzhen City, having so many scorecards now, had most likely taken them from other examinees. With that in mind, Lin Zikan said, "We don't need to team up, but if you really can't get over it and want to repay the kindness, you can just give us the scorecards you have." Upon hearing this, the male student's face turned unpleasant in an instant. Having issued 3 invites to team up and being rejected all 3 times had made him somewhat infuriated. "Classmate, it seems we're on a narrow road." The male student dropped his facade, narrowed his eyes threateningly, and said. At this moment, Lin Zikan's danger perception biometric attribute was throbbing, sensing the intense malice emanating from the male student. In response, he smiled calmly and said, "Yes, the road is narrow. P.S. Holding out my bowl, asking for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets." Chapter 94-93, Fitness Test. In the quiet forest, Lin Zikan looked at the boy lying motionless on the ground, completely passed out, with a face full of astonishment. Wasn't it 6 seconds for 100 meters? And being able to lift a 750 kilograms barbell with one hand? I didn't even use force, so how did he fall with just one punch? He suspected that the boy now sprawled unconscious on the ground was bragging yesterday, and his actual strength wasn't as formidable. Otherwise, how could he pass out from a single punch? You should know, that punch just now wasn't strong, it was only meant to cause pain. Not wasting time on such trivial matters, Lin Zikan soon squatted down and took all 28 scorecards from the boy for himself. "Xiao Chen, he won't have any issues, right? No worries, he's just fainted, I hardly used any force with that punch." Having said that, Lin Zikan quickly stood up and left with Shen Qinghan. In the time that followed, Lin Zikan continued to focus on training Shen Qinghan's wilderness survival skills, without rushing deeper into the forest. And then, in the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The two went from the initial outer periphery, gradually entering the depths of the forest. During that time, Shen Qinghan's wilderness survival skills became increasingly strong. Whether it was finding water sources, making fire by friction, or fighting wild beasts, she looked more and more professional. Especially when hunting a wild boar, she managed to kill it without injury, using just a sharpened bamboo stick combined with exceptional wisdom and skill, and enjoyed a delicious roasted pork meal. That afternoon, after Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan had searched all the scorecards nearby, they continued on toward the deeper parts of the forest. As they were about to enter the deepest area, they encountered He Yu, who had just come out from there. At this time, He Yu had a black eye and his upper clothing was ragged, as if he had been in a scuffle. After asking, Lin Zikin learned that He Yu had been gang-beaten by several top students from Changzhou City, and all of his scorecards had been taken. He Yu, do you want to join us? Shen Qinghan extended an invitation to He Yu, thinking that since they were in the same group in class, it was fated they met and should definitely team up. However, He Yu decisively refused. Forget it, there's no challenge in being on a team with Ziyi Chen, I'd rather continue as a lone wolf. In the remaining 3 days, I'll go back to the outer areas to snatch other people's scorecards. Upon hearing this, Lin Zikin couldn't help the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. There's no challenge teaming up with me, but there's a challenge in robbing weaker examinees? What's this, bullying the weak and fearing the strong? After parting ways with He Yu, Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan continued heading deeper into the forest. The closer they got to the heart of the forest, the more formidable the examinees they encountered. Along the way, they were ambushed by other examinees over 10 times. They had been accosted by lone examinees. They had encountered acts of righteous gang beatings. But without exception, all these examinees who came to rob them ended up being thoroughly plundered by Lin Zikin instead. Time quickly passed and another 3 days went by. It was the 7th day of the practical assessment, also the final day. That morning, Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan arrived at the deepest part of the forest, only to find that the exotic beasts had already been killed off by others. Lin Zikin wasn't surprised by this. He knew that on the first day of the practical assessment, many geniuses headed straight for these low-level exotic beasts in the forest's depths, paying no attention to the scorecards along the way. He guessed that by the second day of the assessment, all the beasts here had been killed off. Xiao Chen, what a pity, if we could have come earlier, you definitely would have won the title of Genius Beast Slayer. As Shen Qinghan uttered these words, she thought to herself that if it weren't for Lin Zikin being busy training her wilderness survival skills these past few days, the exotic beasts here wouldn't stand a chance against the other exam candidates. Contrary to her, Lin Zikin didn't feel any regret. With security personnel and cameras everywhere, killing the exotic beasts wouldn't allow consumption, so it was meaningless. It was better to take this opportunity to properly train Shen Qinghan's wilderness survival skills. As for the title of Genius Beast Slayer, he didn't care at all. As long as he had enough scorecards in hand to help himself and Shen Qinghan achieve good results, that was enough. Soon, the last day of the practical assessment passed by. Under the guidance of the security officers, all the students left the forest, returned to the entrance point, and boarded their respective school buses to return home. The practical assessment was so torturous, it's finally over. Yeah, these 7 days were extremely tough. Once I get home I'm going to have a big meal and sleep well. Tomorrow is the compatibility test, the decisive moment for one's life. On the bus of Class 1, Grade 3. The students were chatting energetically, making a ruckus. Lin Zikin, with earphones in and oblivious to the noise inside the bus, quietly watched news videos on his phone. Sitting beside him, Shen Qinghan was also wearing her earphones and listening to music, resting on his shoulder and asleep. During the 7 days of the practical assessment, Shen Qinghan hardly got any good sleep, and now she was extremely sleepy. Engrossed in the news, Lin Zikin suddenly felt a tap on his shoulder from behind. He took off his earphones and looked back to find that it was He Yu who had tapped him. Upon seeing Lin Zikin turning around, He Yu immediately pointed towards Wang Shuzhe and Liu Gang sitting behind them and said with confusion. Something is off about these two, I personally saw them team up to kill a demonic beast deep in the forest. With their personalities, they should be showing off right now, why are they so quiet? Hearing this from He Yu, Lin Zikin also glanced at Wang Shuzhe and Liu Gang. He indeed noticed that the two of them looked a bit off, as if they were preoccupied with heavy thoughts. However, he didn't pay it much attention, thinking that the two might have been outshone by the geniuses from other schools and were now brooding over it. 2 hours later, the bus returned to Shanghai High School. The moment the bus stopped, Wang Shuzhe and Liu Gang, who were sitting near the back, hurriedly got off and left, walking faster than anyone else, which looked very unusual. Lin Zikin saw this scene and found it strange, but he didn't dwell on it and soon got off the bus with Shen Qinghan to head home. In the past 7 days, they had only taken 2 baths, and now their bodies felt so uncomfortable that they just wanted to go home and thoroughly clean themselves inside and out. Xiao Chen, tomorrow we have the compatibility test for genetic fusion and mechanical modification. Just thinking about it makes me so nervous. I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep tonight because of the anxiety, Shen Qinghan said worriedly on the way home. Hearing her talk about her nervousness this time, Lin Zikin didn't think like before that she had a bad mindset. Because the compatibility test was the most important part of the university entrance exam, determining the upper limit of each candidate's future, it was only natural to be nervous. Unlike the previous written tests on theoretical knowledge, the physical fitness test, and the practical assessment of wilderness survival skills, the importance of all 3 combined wasn't even a tenth of the compatibility test happening tomorrow. Passing the written test, physical fitness test, and practical assessment meant that one could go to university. But what kind of university they could enter, and whether they could become a genetic integrator or a mechanically modified human, all depended on tomorrow's compatibility test. Naturally, people with better physical fitness generally had higher compatibility for genetic fusion and mechanical modification. Therefore, students with high compatibility scores were mostly excellent students. In other words, it wasn't too realistic for underperforming students to hope for a turnaround with this test. With my current physical strength being so exaggerated, I wonder what kind of result I'll get in tomorrow's compatibility test, Lin Zikin thought, full of curiosity. P.S. Asking for monthly and recommendation tickets. Chapter 95, 94. If there are exotic beasts, there should be exotic people. At night, after having dinner and a shower, Lin Zikin went back to his room and sprawled on his bed, scrolling through news on his smartphone. Close to 9 o'clock, his next-door neighbor Shen Qinghan came to find him, dressed in pajamas and carrying a fruit brand tablet computer into his room. "This tablet is for you, my mom bought it especially for you," she said. Shen Qinghan handed the tablet that she was holding over to Lin Zikin. Lin Zikin was somewhat puzzled. "Why did Auntie Meng suddenly give me this?" Shen Qinghan explained, "Before the practical assessment, didn't my mom say she would buy the latest fruit brand smartphones for us? She thought it over and felt that tablets would be more convenient for our studies, so she decided to buy tablets instead." Upon hearing her explanation, Lin Zikin remembered. He picked up his smartphone and sent a message to Su Meng on WeChat, saying he really liked the fruit brand tablet computer and thanked Auntie Meng. While he was chatting with Su Meng, Shen Qinghan at the bedside took off her slippers, revealing a pair of petite, delicate, fair feet, and skillfully climbed onto his bed. She then sat cross-legged on the bed, her pretty face showing a faint blush, and said softly, "Xiao Chen, I want to sleep over at your place tonight, is that okay?" "What?" Lin Zikin thought he had heard wrong and looked up at her in surprise. Shen Qinghan clarified, "The compatibility test is tomorrow, and if I sleep alone, I will definitely keep thinking about it and then not be able to sleep. But if I sleep with you, I can talk to someone and divert my attention, so I won't keep thinking about the compatibility test and end up unable to sleep." After saying this, she looked into Lin Zikin's eyes and asked again, "Is it okay?" "If you want to, then of course it's okay," Lin Zikin replied. It's not like they hadn't slept together before. When they were children, they often slept together. More recently, they had slept together during the 7 days of the past practical assessment. "Then I'll tell my mom now that I won't be going home tonight." Shen Qinghan took out her phone and informed Su Meng on WeChat that she would be sleeping over at Lin Zikin's place tonight. For something like this, she knew Su Meng would definitely not mind. As expected, Su Meng had no objections, and even proactively said she would bring over a toothbrush, toothpaste, towel, diapers, and the clothes to wear for the next day for her. But she didn't need them. because she had already brought these daily necessities with her when she came to find Lin Zikin. In the time that followed, the two sat close together, watching the news on the newly purchased fruit brand tablet. They watched and chatted, discussing the contents of the news. During this time, they came across many news stories about the conservative faction in evolution. It was the faction that does not support genetic fusion, but firmly believes that humans can break their limitations through their own potential and evolve into advanced level creatures, rare level creatures, or even epic level creatures. During the time of the college entrance exams, these conservatives were very active, frequently appearing in news reports from major media outlets, extending olive branches to many genius examinees. They claimed to have unique body refining methods that could very likely help humans break free from the limitations of frail flesh and refine the body to a strength not inferior to genetic integrators and mechanically modified humans. However, these body refining practices could only be cultivated by pure-blood humans with intact bodies. Therefore, they now need enough geniuses to practice these body refining methods to prove to the world that humans can evolve into higher forms of life solely through their own potential. As soon as these conservative views were aired, they immediately drew countless curses. People criticized them for enticing geniuses to give up genetic fusion and mechanical modifications to practice their so-called body refining methods, claiming it was harmful. Xiao Chen, do you think humans can really evolve into higher level beings purely through their own potential? After reading these conservative statements, Shen Qinghan couldn't help but raise such a question. Her personal opinion was that they could not. If humans truly had this potential, with so many people around the globe, some would have evolved into higher level creatures based solely on their own inherent abilities by now. However, to date, not a single example exists. Beyond genetic integrators and mechanically modified humans, the strongest known pure-blood humans are at the ordinary 9th rank in terms of biological level. They are very strong, and their statistics are infinitely close to those of advanced level creatures, but they have always been unable to break through the last barrier to evolve into advanced level creatures. I believe that humans can evolve into higher level creatures based solely on their inherent potential," replied Lin Zikin without hesitation. Seeing his decisive answer, Shen Qinghan couldn't help but ask with curiosity emanating from her clear eyes, "Why do you think so?" "I feel that if this world has exotic beasts, then correspondingly, there should be exotic humans. That would make things seem more reasonable," explained Lin Zikin, and then he added, "The exotic humans I'm referring to are the kind of humans who can evolve continuously through their own potential." "That does make sense." Shen Qinghan mused with a contemplative expression. "Logically, if there are exotic beasts, there should definitely be exotic humans too. It's unreasonable for there to be only exotic beasts and no exotic humans. But where are the exotic humans? Exotic beasts have been around for so long, so why haven't exotic humans appeared?" Shen Qinghan was genuinely puzzled, feeling that it didn't make sense. Suddenly, she had a thought and immediately turned to Lin Zikin. "Xiao Chen, you're not an exotic human, are you?" Lin Zikin denied, "You're overthinking it. I'm definitely not one. I'm just a wimp. How can I compare to an exotic human?" The next morning, just as the sky began to brighten, Lin Zikin awoke from his bed and the first thing he did was to lift the blanket to check if the bed was wet. Thankfully, it was dry. Shen Qinghan hadn't urinated last night, or perhaps she wore a diaper. Lin Zikin wasn't unduly worried for no reason. As a child, Shen Qinghan's bedwetting had truly scared him. Every time she didn't wear a diaper and they slept in the same bed, he would invariably be urinated on, which had left him with a psychological shadow. About half an hour later, Shen Qinghan also woke up. After the two of them freshened up and had breakfast, they headed out to school together. The compatibility test for the candidates of Shanghai City was arranged in a research facility on an island. To get there, students had to take a school bus. In less than 10 minutes, Lin Zikin and Shen Qinghan reached the school. By that time, the schoolyard was already teeming with people. The candidates were waiting for the buses to come and pick them up. Before long, the buses arrived. All of the candidates boarded and set off for the research facility. On the bus, Lin Zikan thought back to Wang Shuzha and Lu Gang's odd behavior from the day before and glanced over at them out of the corner of his eye. He then noticed that they didn't seem to be in good spirits. They appeared somewhat listless, lacking their usual energy. So what exactly was wrong with these two? Lin Zikan was quite puzzled. P.S. Holding out my bowl, asking for monthly tickets and recommendation votes. Chapter 96, 95, Fitness Test Results. On an island within Shanghai City. In front of the scientific research base. As soon as the vehicle stopped, the teacher leading the team from Shanghai High School immediately took the students into the base. Today, nearly 5,000 martial arts students from all over Shanghai City had come here for testing. Being able to enter early to queue would save a lot of time. Once inside the base, Lin Zikan looked around curiously. What caught his eye were various sophisticated instruments, filled with a sense of technology. Don't just look around, while there are still not many students from other schools, and it's not too crowded, everyone hurry up and line up at a testing window, urged the teacher leading the Shanghai High School team. Upon hearing this, the students hurriedly chose the less crowded testing windows to queue for their compatibility tests. Lin Zikan, with Shen Qinghan in tow, casually picked a window where fewer people were lined up. He Yu and Li Chuxin followed, lining up behind them. Xiao Chen, are those reagents inside used for testing the genetic fusion compatibility with the drifting jellyfish genes? Shen Qinghan asked somewhat uncertainly as she looked at the test tubes filled with blue liquid inside the testing window. Lin Zikan replied, yes, those are the drifting jellyfish gene reagents. The genes of the drifting jellyfish, an exotic beast, have a high affinity for the human body and can easily undergo a particular chemical reaction with human blood. Therefore, they are used as reagents for testing genetic fusion compatibility. The testing method is also quite straightforward. It involves drawing fresh blood from the examinees on site and injecting it into the drifting jellyfish reagents to induce a chemical reaction. Then, based on the reaction's intensity, judges would determine whether the examinee is suitable for genetic fusion. The compatibility tests started soon after. First, they tested the genetic fusion compatibility. Testing for mechanical modification compatibility would only occur later. This arrangement could reduce a lot of unnecessary testing. Normally, after examinees checked their genetic fusion compatibility and found satisfactory data, they wouldn't bother with the mechanical modification compatibility test. After all, mechanical modification is too inhuman for many, they can't accept their body turning into steel. For the vast majority of examinees, if they are compatible with genetic fusion, they definitely will not choose mechanical modification. Even though genetic fusion changes your genes, you still have a body of flesh and blood far better than cold steel. As for whether there are people just curious and eager to know their mechanical modification compatibility, thus specifically going for the test. There are indeed such people, but very few, almost negligible. Because the compatibility test for mechanical modification is not as mild as the one for genetic fusion. The mechanical modification compatibility test involves implanting a special alloy material into the human body. During the process, the body will exhibit rejection reactions, causing extremely intense pain. The level of pain is on par with that of childbirth. About half an hour later, Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan had both had their blood drawn. Next, they just needed to find a place to sit and wait for the results. The results would be out in no longer than an hour. As the two chatted and waited, many of the examinees who had their blood drawn earlier started to get their results one after another. The results could be checked on their mobile phones. Thus, the base soon filled with various shouts. 8%. My genetic fusion compatibility is as high as 8%. Haha. Fortune favors me. I can become a genetic integrator. Only 4%? Sigh, I knew I could never become a genetic integrator. 6%. Hiss. Thrilling. Just made it past the mark. Hearing these shouts, Lin Zikin too became curious, wanting to know what his own genetic fusion compatibility would be. The standards for genetic fusion compatibility: 6% is passing, 8% is excellent, 10% is the level for the two prestigious schools. These two prestigious schools refer to Kyoto University and Shanghai University. Yes, the Shanghai University located right in Shanghai City. Although the educational standards of Shanghai City are not high and don't compare to many inland cities, it still boasts such a top-tier institution. The reason lies in Shanghai City's particularly strong economy. Setting political status aside, Shanghai City has the country's top economic level. Genetic fusion and mechanical modification are both costly fields. Take genetic fusion, for example. Cultivating a genetic integrator with a high biological level would cost a sum counted in billions. Not 1 or 2 billion, but tens of billions. Therefore, the economically developed Shanghai University was able to become one of the top 2 universities in the country. To be admitted to the Evolution College of these two prestigious institutions, genetic fusion adaptability had to be at least 10%. Otherwise, don't even think about it. Take that genius from Kyoto University, also known as that frequently marketed prodigy from capital city. His genetic fusion adaptability reached a staggering 16%. He belonged to the top echelon of the country. Lin Zikin thought, without undergoing genetic fusion, his own physical strength was much higher than that Kyoto genius. So, barring any surprises, his genetic fusion adaptability should be higher than 16%. He estimated it could be close to 20%. However, no matter how high that number was, it would be meaningless. For someone with survival of the fittest as a biometric attribute, he was destined not to choose the path of genetic fusion. Why fuse when you could directly devour? There was absolutely no need for it. Xiao Chen. I can't take it, I'm so nervous. Shen Qinghan looked at Lin Zikin helplessly, her hands shaking violently, and her legs going weak. At this moment, there was not a hint of curiosity in her heart, only fear. Fear that her genetic fusion adaptability was not high. It's okay, being nervous is normal. Lin Zikin took Shen Qinghan's hands to calm her down. In fact, he was also a bit afraid that Shen Qinghan's genetic fusion adaptability would not be high enough to get accepted into any of the two top schools and continue being his classmate. From kindergarten to now, he had grown accustomed to school life with Shen Qinghan by his side. The thought of not being at the same university was unbearable. As for helping Shen Qinghan get in through the back door during college, like he did in middle and high school, that would be too harmful. It could very well make Shen Qinghan, who had just started to become confident, become self-doubting and introverted again. 10%. My God! I can't believe I got into one of the two top schools. Li Chuxin, who was sitting not far away, suddenly leapt up in excitement. Her grades were among the worst in class, and she never dreamed of getting into one of these top schools. She just hoped to get into a top 10 university, but she unexpectedly exceeded her own expectations. Damn it! How come it's only 11%? Contrary to Li Chuxin, Yu, looking at the score displayed on his phone, had a face full of disappointment, feeling as if his life had dimmed. He believed he was at a 12% level, even capable of reaching 13%. But the result was only 11%, only 1% more than Li Chuxin, the bottom of the class. Now he was truly at a loss. Hearing the two of them talk, Lin Zikin knew that his and Shen Qinghan's results were out. He said to Shen Qinghan, the scores for Yu and Chu Xin, who ranked after us, are out, so ours must be too. Check quickly and see. Shen Qinghan shook her head, nervously saying, I don't dare to look, you check yours first. After you're done, you help me check. All right, I'll help you check afterwards. After speaking, Lin Zikin logged into the Nanjiang Province College Entrance Examination website to check his results. At that moment, He Yu and Li Chuxin, who weren't far away, gathered around, curious about how high his score would be. Soon, the score was retrieved. Genetic fusion adaptability, 15%. 15%, that's so high, if nothing unusual happens this should be the highest in Nanjiang province, said Li Chuxin with a face full of envy. He Yu commented, 15%? It's about what I expected. Shen Qinghan said with a joyful face, Xiao Chen, with that score, you should be the provincial top scholar for sure. She felt happy for Lin Zikan. Unlike the other three, Lin Zikan was not very satisfied with this score. Only 15%, too low, not even surpassing that Kyoto genius. It seemed that physical strength was not the only determining factor for a high adaptability. There were other various factors influencing it. After studying his emotions a bit, Lin Zikan looked at Shen Qinghan and said, Han Han, it's your turn to check. All right, check it for me, said Shen Qinghan, her voice revealing a trace of nervousness. Li Chuxin, noticing Shen Qinghan's state, comforted her, don't worry, Han Han, even I, the one at the bottom, got 10%, you definitely can too. He Yu also offered comforting words, yeah, team member, you're one of the top students in our class. Getting into the top schools is a sure thing, there won't be any surprises. Yeah, I'm confident, Shen Qinghan smiled at them, but was still very nervous. Without saying anything, Lin Zikan silently logged into Shen Qinghan's examinee portal and clicked to view her score. Then the next second, a number appeared that was beyond anyone's expectations. Genetic fusion adaptability, 21%. P.S. Begging for monthly and recommendation tickets. Chapter 97, 96, Walking on the Waves. Nanjiang Province, Provincial Education Headquarters. Conference Hall. Yuan Dongji, the director of the Provincial Education Headquarters, was currently watching the live data of the college entrance examination with educational leaders from various cities in the province. In front of them was a huge projector. The projection displayed the genetic fusion adaptability test results of the candidates from each city. Yuan Dongji stared at it for a while, his eyebrows involuntarily furrowing slightly. This year's scores seemed to be even worse than last year's. Particularly in Haiwan City, which lagged behind in teaching standards, the candidates' scores were outrageously poor. So far, fewer than 1/10 of the candidates had a genetic fusion adaptability of over 5%, far below the average. Principal Han, the college entrance examination scores from the Haiwan City you oversee are excessively poor this year, said Yuan Dongji, looking at a man in front of him with a faint expression. If it's the same next year, you should no longer occupy the position of the educational leader of Haiwan City. Go find your value in source land number 36 instead. Hearing that he would be sent to the source land, the man who was named immediately showed terror on his face. Principal Yuan, next year's genetic fusion college admission rate for Haiwan City will be at least 10%. If I cannot achieve it, I, Han Qian, will go to the source land to contribute myself, the man declared with a cold sweat on his forehead under Yuan Dongji's gaze. Yuan Dongji, with an expressionless face, said, Principal Han, 10% is too low. Let's set it at 20%. If you don't reach this number next year, I will personally send you into the source land. Hearing it was 20%, the man's face turned ashen. He slumped into his chair, as if all the strength had been drained from his body. With such a poor level of education in Haiwan City, how could he possibly achieve this number? To poach top students from other cities? But with Haiwan City's economy in tatters, where would he find the money to do this? Yuan Dongji's words were tantamount to sentencing the man to death, forcing him into the source land. And inside the source land, where exotic beasts roamed everywhere, even advanced level creatures struggled to survive, easily meeting with disaster if not careful. For a man like him, who had long lived in comfort within human society as an older genetic integrator, once he entered the source land, and if he encountered an exotic beast's rampage, it was almost certain death. The other cities' educational leaders were all very clear on this and looked at the man with sympathy in their eyes. However, none of them dared to speak up for him. They all knew too well how domineering Yuan Dongji could be. As subordinates, they dared not provoke her, to avoid bringing trouble upon themselves. Principal Luo, the results of Jianzhen City you manage this year are very good. Several candidates have reached a genetic fusion adaptability of 13%, and there's even one at 14%. That's commendable. Next year's educational budget will be inclined more towards your side, Yuan Dongji said after she finished with Haiwan City's educational leader, clearly showing her principle of rewarding and punishing. Hearing this, Jianzhen City's educational leader beamed, saying, "Thank you for the recognition, Principal Yuan. Next year I will certainly not let you down and will push Jianzhen City's college entrance examination scores even higher." The other cities' educational leaders were all incredibly envious. Then, one by one, they smiled and offered their congratulations to the educational leader of Jianzhen City. With a genetic fusion adaptability as high as 14%, and barring any surprises, that's probably this year's top scorer of Nanjiang Province. Jianzhen City is on the rise this year. Principal Luo, congratulations, congratulations. Jianzhen City's educational leader said with a smile, "Ah, it's all luck." Just then, the score region for the Shanghai City candidates on the projection showed Lin Zikin's genetic fusion adaptability. Candidate, Lin Zikin. Examination number, 120-732-2328. School, Shanghai High School. Genetic fusion adaptability, 15%. When they saw the 15% at the bottom, everyone was startled for a moment. Then, as they came to grips with it, their faces filled with incredulity. How much? A 15% genetic fusion adaptability? Is that for real? That's almost touching the 16% of the geniuses from the capital city. Lin Zikin? A candidate from Shanghai City? Principal Zhu, you've been quietly making a fortune. Unbelievable, the provincial top scorer is actually from Shanghai City. All the city educational leaders present were shocked by Lin Zikin's score. Even the educational leader of Shanghai City was very surprised, feeling a bit dazed. He knew of the student Lin Zikin, knew that he had been breaking records at Shanghai High School throughout his 3 years of high school. But he never imagined that Lin Zikin's genetic fusion adaptability could be so high. 15%, that was outrageous. With such a score, without even thinking about it, he was definitely the provincial top scorer. Principal Zhu, well done. Next year's educational funding will be focused towards Shanghai City, Yuan Dongji said, looking at the educational leader of Shanghai City, revealing a rare smile. She was born in Shanghai City and also worked at Shanghai University, feeling a deep connection to the city and wanting to favor it all along. But regretfully, the academic performance of Shanghai City had never been particularly outstanding, and even if she wanted to be biased, she didn't know how to show it. Now, with the provincial top scorer from Shanghai City, she could justifiably allocate more funds to her hometown. Thank you for the recognition, Principal Yuan. Shanghai City will strive to maintain this performance next year, the educational leader of Shanghai City said, visibly delighted. In contrast, the educational leader from Jianzhen City was glum, filled with helplessness and embarrassment from the dramatic rise and fall of his expectations. The top scorer he thought he had secured was gone. And so was the inclined funding. People were stunned. Just when everyone thought that Lin Zikin would be the top student of Nanjiang Province. The projection of the Shanghai City candidates' scores displayed the genetic fusion compatibility of Shen Qinghan. Candidate, Shen Qinghan. Examination number, 120-732-2467. School, Shanghai High School. Genetic fusion compatibility, 21%. The moment the figure 21% appeared, the entire conference hall fell into dead silence. About 1 or 2 seconds later, the leaders' voices of doubt rose one after another. 21%? What is this situation? Since the existence of the high school exams, the highest genetic fusion compatibility score was 18%. How did a 21% just pop up? Was there an error in measurement? Machinery malfunction? That Linziken from before, was that also a measurement error or machinery malfunction? Possible. The leaders were much calmer than imagined. If the score had come out as 16%, the leaders would have been shocked. But the score that came out was 21%, which was truly beyond reason, so their first reaction was that there had been an error during the test. Yuan Dongji didn't speak, but silently pulled up Shen Qinghan's student file and began to slowly review the information projected onto the large screen. After a careful look, Shen Qinghan seemed like an ordinary student, with nothing special about her. After reviewing the files, the other leaders were even more convinced that it was a measurement error. They criticized the staff of the Shanghai City Research Base for their carelessness. It was utterly unacceptable, and they must be held accountable. On the other side, Yuan Dongji frowned slightly, also feeling that the staff there had been too careless. But considering the what-ifs, she stood up and left the conference room to go to the base and see what was really going on. After all, the base wasn't far from here, she could get there quickly. In the research base, the four people stared at the genetic compatibility displayed on their phones, all looking bewildered. What the hell, 21%? Is this a mistake? He rubbed his eyes and looked at the phone screen again, still seeing the 21% displayed and filled with confusion. Li Chuxin was speechless. Are the staff at this base so careless? They didn't even verify the results before uploading the scores. Is this some kind of joke? He said, the test scores are automatically recognized and uploaded by machines. It's not their fault, the machine may have malfunctioned. Li Chuxin disagreed, even if it's a machine fault, they're to blame. This is the high school exam. Don't they know to check the state of the machines beforehand? Machine errors are common. Just because a machine is checked and no problems are found doesn't mean it won't malfunction. He still defended his point of view, feeling it wasn't the staff's fault. The two carried on with this back and forth. Eventually, their conversation turned into a debate, looking like they were bickering. Xiao Chen, how come it's 21%? There must have been a mistake, right? Shen Qinghan, looking at the score on the phone screen, also thought it was preposterous and that there must have been an error in the measurement. Linziken had a guess but, seeing there were many people around, didn't rush to tell Shen Qinghan. Instead, he stood up and led her out of the base to a secluded corner with no people and no surveillance. Then, he said to her, I think there was no mistake. Your superpower is related to water. You have a natural affinity with water and are extremely comfortable with it. Conveniently, the reagent used to test the genetic fusion compatibility is the stream cloud jellyfish, a water-associated exotic beast with a strong water attribute. At this point, Linziken offered his conclusion, I suspect that your physique is highly compatible with the gene of a water attribute exotic beast. Upon hearing this, Shen Qinghan also came to realize this point belatedly. Following that, she felt a surge of excitement. Genetic fusion compatibility of 21% signified a genius among geniuses. She finally felt worthy of Xiao Chen. At this moment, Shen Qinghan was preoccupied with this thought. Since she was young, her status compared to Linziken seemed extremely unequal in the eyes of others. Because of this, she had suffered quite a bit of verbal abuse at school, which had hurt her deeply. If this 21% genetic fusion compatibility data was indeed true, then she would no longer have to endure people gossiping about her being with Linziken. At that moment, Shen Qinghan's phone rang. It was a video call from Li Chuxin. As soon as she answered, Li Chuxin's voice came through immediately, Han Han, where did you run off to? The base staff finally realized there was something off with your data, and now they want you to come back for an individual retest. Okay, I'm heading back right now. After saying this, Shen Qinghan hung up the video call, eager to return to the base with Lin Zikan. She wanted to be retested as soon as possible to confirm whether her genetic fusion compatibility was indeed as high as 21%. Just as she returned to the base and prepared for the staff to conduct the test, the sea outside the base suddenly erupted in towering waves. Everyone was startled by the commotion of the waves. They all looked up through the glass towards the outside. Immediately, what entered everyone's view was a woman with dragon horns on her head, riding on waves dozens of meters high, rapidly approaching the base. PS, I'm putting out the begging bowl, asking for your monthly and recommendation tickets. Chapter 98, 97, Dragon Slaying Family. The terrifying towering wave was rushing towards the research base at high speed. The tremendous noise it made penetrated the ears of every person inside the base. There's a woman on the wave. With a pair of dragon horns, she's a dragon woman. She's so beautiful. Suddenly, an examinee shouted out loud, his face filled with shock. This examinee had switched his smartphone's camera to the telephoto mode and could clearly see the woman on the wave from a distance of several kilometers. On hearing this, everyone turned their attention towards the examinee. Seeing him using his smartphone as a telescope, many others remembered their phones had this feature. They took out their own devices, switched the camera to telephoto mode, and carefully observed the dragon woman who was walking on the waves. Lin Zikan followed suit upon seeing this. Soon, he saw the woman who was walking on the waves. She appeared to be in her early 40s, with a noble and aloof face reminiscent of a wealthy lady, dressed in a blue and white porcelain cheongsam, revealing a pair of plump and fair long legs, her whole demeanor exuding an air of charm and poise. At first glance, she gave off the vibe of a sexy stepmother from a metropolitan novel, or a stunning sect mistress from a wuxia tale, or a cold and distant fairy master from a cultivation story, igniting one's imagination. By the way, that wave, tens of meters high, could it collapse the base? Suddenly, an examinee said this. The next moment, the other examinees in the base instantly panicked, realizing the gravity of the situation. They snapped out of their shock, with expressions of terror on their faces. It's over, the woman walking on the wave is speeding up. She's probably a member of the heretical sect coming to attack the college entrance examination site, planning to kill all of us examinees. No way, don't scare me. I don't want to die, I studied so hard for so many years, barely finished the exams, I still want to enjoy university life. More and more examinees began to panic, their emotions turning more and more anxious. It was only when the head of the base came out and said that the woman on the wave was a leader from the Nanjiang province educational headquarters that the examinees' emotions finally stabilized. At the same time, He Yu, who had been carefully observing the woman through his smartphone camera, finally recognized her identity. He said to Lin Zikan and the others nearby. Team members, I know who that beautiful woman on the wave is now. She's a vice principal from Shanghai University Yuan Dongji. Having said this, he immediately showed off his extensive knowledge to his teammates and began to introduce Yuan Dongji. Let me tell you, this woman's background is incredible, she comes from a millennium-old martial arts family in Nanjiang province, the Yuan family. The Yuan family was originally just a martial arts family in Shanghai City, and they could only dominate Shanghai City. But since entering the era of genetic fusion, the Yuan family produced many powerful genetic integrators. Their family strength saw a great increase, and within decades, they became the foremost family in Nanjiang province, and a lord that dominated their territory. Did you see the dragon horns on that woman's head? Back in Nangwan City where I lived, I heard my grandfather say that the Yuan family had slain dragons and fused their genes into the younger generation of their family, creating many water attribute genetic integrators capable of controlling water. And this woman is one of them. After saying all of this, He Yu looked eagerly at the three teammates beside him, hoping to see a hint of admiration in their eyes. Li Chuxin gave him an unimpressed look and said, "All right already, we get it, you're well informed." Shen Qinghan sincerely admired him and said, "He you know so much." He Yu was ecstatic as he listened, thinking to himself how awesomely satisfying it is to put on airs. He continued to boast. "Definitely, I am the young master of the He family from Nangwan City. I have some serious insights. I have an intimate understanding of many important figures, even those who have never appeared on television screens. I know them well. If you have any questions in relation to these matters, feel free to consult me at any time." As he said this last sentence, He Yu specifically looked towards Lin Zikan, hoping to gain the approval of this king of pretense. However, Lin Zikan was deep in thought at that moment and subconsciously ignored He Yu, who was beside him. A genetic integrator with the water attribute? Could it be the woman outside, who was controlling the huge waves and quickly approaching the base? Was coming for Shen Qinghan? After all, right after Shen Qinghan had tested for a 21% genetic fusion compatibility, this woman had arrived. She was not only the vice principal of Shanghai University but also a leader in the provincial education department. With the additional insight from her family being genetic integrators of the water attribute, this combination of identities probably allowed her to discern the reason behind Shen Qinghan's high compatibility score for genetic fusion. And her arrival on top of the huge waves must be concerning this matter. With these thoughts, Lin Zikan couldn't help feeling a bit worried, uncertain whether Yuan Dongji's arrival was a good or bad thing. While he was pondering these matters, a wave of panic erupted among the candidates in the base. It was Yuan Dongji who had brought the towering waves crashing to the edge of the base. The dozens of meters high waves, which loomed and obscured the sky like a dark cloud, hovered in front of the base entrance, casting the entire base into shadow. Lin Zikan was astounded by the scene in front of him. Dozens of meters high, the towering waves were under the control of a human as if at will. What kind of strength was needed to achieve this? An advanced fighter? A rare level fighter? Or an epic level powerhouse? In that instant, Lin Zikan suddenly felt very insignificant, keenly aware that he could only dominate within the school at his current stage. Outside of the campus, there are others beyond one's own level, and skies beyond our skies. Outside the base. With just a thought, Yuan Dongji sent the dozens of meters high towering waves back into the sea. Afterward, under the watchful eyes of everyone, she walked elegantly towards the base. In the meantime, her long, pale, beautiful legs flashed provocatively under the slit of her cheongsam dress, catching the eyes of many teenagers at the peak of their adolescence. Upon entering, she looked at the person in charge of the base and said, "Director Gao, please bring a candidate named Shen Qinghan to me." It took only a moment. The balding director with glasses brought Shen Qinghan before Yuan Dongji, his face full of smiles, ingratiatingly saying, "Principal Yuan, this girl is Shen Qinghan, the one you're looking for." Shen Qinghan was confused about the current situation and felt somewhat at a loss, only able to look helplessly towards Lin Zikan standing beside her. Lin Zikan held her hand reassuringly and said, "It should be related to your genetic fusion compatibility degree. It's very likely not a bad thing, so don't worry." Upon hearing this, Shen Qinghan also relaxed a bit in her heart. At that moment, Yuan Dongji said to her, "Student, there may be some issues with your genetic fusion compatibility score. You need to come with me for a retest. P.S. Bowls out, begging for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets." Chapter 99, 98, White-Haired Girl. Shen Qinghan followed Yuan Dongji into a testing room up ahead. Not long after, she returned. That was quick. Lin Zikan was a bit puzzled. Shen Qinghan, pressing on her arm with a cotton swab, sat down next to him and said, "As soon as I went in, they just drew 3 tubes of blood from me, and then they let me out to wait for the results." Gosh, drawing 3 tubes of blood, that's a lot. Who can stand that? Li Chuxin, who was close by, felt scared just hearing it and couldn't help but complain. Shen Qinghan gave a wry smile, "Indeed, it's unbearable, my hand is even feeling a bit numb now." Yu also found it strange, logically speaking, for a retest, 1 tube of blood should be enough. I don't understand why they needed to draw 3 tubes. While they were talking, the team leader teacher came over to inquire about what was going on, curious why a leader from the Provincial Department of Education had suddenly come to find Shen Qinghan. Lin Zikan answered for Shen Qinghan, saying that the results of the test were a bit abnormal and needed to be retested. As for the specifics, he didn't elaborate to the team leader teacher. As time ticked by, soon, the genetic fusion adaptability tests at the whole base were completed. Almost at the same time, Yuan Dongji came out of the test room. Now, the expression on her face was clearly different from before. It was no longer the aloofness she had when she first arrived at the base, but instead a look of excitement and agitation, with a faint smile on her lips. Principal Yuan. Seeing Yuan Dongji approaching, the team leader teacher from Shanghai High School immediately stood up straight and called out somewhat nervously. Lin Zikan and the others followed suit and greeted her as well. Yuan Dongji toned down the smile on her face and said to the team leader teacher from Shanghai High School, I have some matters to attend to with student Shen Qinghan next. You go ahead and take the other examinees back to school. Once I'm done here, I'll arrange for someone to take her home. I understand, Principal Yuan. The team leader teacher from Shanghai High School replied and then turned around to leave, organizing the students who had completed the genetic fusion adaptability test and were not participating in the afternoon's mechanical transformation adaptability test to board the bus and head back to school. Seeing this, He Yu and Li Chuxin followed the team leader teacher and left. Lin Zikan did not leave, he wanted to stay at the base to accompany Shen Qinghan. Yuan Dongji looked at Shen Qinghan and said, Shen Qinghan, come with me, let's talk inside. Shen Qinghan murmured her acknowledgement and followed her into the director's office. Lin Zikan waited quietly outside, using his phone to explain the situation to Zhang Wangzhen and Su Meng, telling the two mothers that he and Shen Qinghan would be home late. Inside the director's office, Yuan Dongji, shedding her usual aloof demeanor and wearing a smile, said, Student Shen Qinghan, the results are out, all 3 tubes show 21%. Hearing this, Shen Qinghan finally felt the heavy weight in her heart drop. During the time she had waited outside, she had been very worried, very frightened. Frightened that the results would come out to be not 21%, implying the previous 21% was a mistake and the actual score was not even 10%. Yuan Dongji continued, the results of the genetic fusion adaptability tests for the entire Nanjiang province are out, and your 21% stands out, a full 6% higher than the second place. To be honest, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes that it was retested 3 times, I wouldn't believe that this 21% is real. After all, the highest record since the existence of the college entrance exam was only 18%, and many experts have guessed that humans' adaptability to the exotic beast gene might not surpass 20%. However, the score you received today has completely overturned this notion. And it is astonishing. Once it's made public, it will definitely cause a sensation across the country. But, your score is a bit too exaggerated to be released. So, I've just revised it to 16%, just enough to surpass the second place's 15%, allowing you to retain the title of provincial top scorer. Yuan Dongji took a sip of tea and continued, you must have heard about that genius from the capital city who has been hyped up for many years, right? Yes, I have heard of him, Shen Qinghan nodded and replied. Putting down her teacup, Yuan Dongji said, that capital city genius is known almost nationwide, but what many don't know is that because of his high profile, he has been constantly attacked by heretical sect members since he was young, once even nearly losing his life. It is only because of his family's strong background providing enough protection that he could withstand such attacks. If it were the child of an ordinary family, they might have been attacked by heretical sect members so many times that by now the grass on their graves would be 2 meters high. The mechanical genius girl marketed along with him is a prime example. News reports say that this mechanical genius girl's body failed due to premature mechanical transformation. But the truth of the matter is, she was attacked by heretical sect members and was cut in two. If not for the Machine God Corporation's intervention, she would have been long gone. Yuan Dongji cautioned, I told you all this to make a point. Being the provincial top scorer is indeed a proud achievement, but it's best if only you and your family know. Don't over-publicize it to avoid attracting the attention of the heretical sect members, understand? Shen Qinghan nodded, I understand. This was the first time she had heard about these hidden truths. These things had never been mentioned in the news. Before today, she had always thought the news was transparent, with many reports about the exotic beasts being quite thorough. Unexpectedly, she was still too naive. Many things were not disclosed to the public. The world was far more complex than it appeared on the surface. But she couldn't understand, what was there to hide about a heretical sect attack? Was there some secret that couldn't be exposed? She couldn't figure it out at all. Forget it, when she got home, she would tell Xiao Chen and let Xiao Chen think about it. Shen Qinghan silently thought to herself. Lin Zikan was her childhood friend and her encyclopedia. As long as she didn't understand something, she could just ask Lin Zikan. Since childhood, she had always relied on Lin Zikan more than her own parents. All right, we've talked enough, it's time for the main issue. Yuan Dongji's expression turned serious. The main issue? What main issue? Shen Qinghan was first puzzled, then anxious, as she sat up straight. Yuan Dongji didn't beat around the bush and cut to the chase. Your genetic fusion talent is very high, and I want to take you as my disciple. Ah! Shen Qinghan was stunned. Yuan Dongji didn't explain too much, merely saying indifferently, as my disciple, the feat I performed outside the base, walking on the waves, you will be able to do it easily in the future. This is too sudden. I'm not psychologically prepared at all, can I think about it? Shen Qinghan said weakly. She couldn't make up her mind and wanted to ask Lin Zikan for his opinion before making a decision. However, Yuan Dongji's personality was very dominant, as she unilaterally decided. There's nothing to consider. Being my disciple will only bring benefits, no drawbacks. From this moment on, you and I are master and apprentice. I hold positions both as Minister of the Nanjiang Provincial Education Headquarters and as Vice-Chancellor of Shanghai University. You will attend Shanghai University. Having said all this independently, Yuan Dongji then asked Shen Qinghan, do you have anything to say? Shen Qinghan opened her mouth to say something but realized she didn't know what to say. In the end, she could only purse her lips and give a feeble shake of her head, no. Her personality had always been on the meeker side, and under Yuan Dongji's imposing dominance, she confusedly acknowledged this master. I don't like complications, and I prefer to keep things simple, therefore, a verbal agreement on our master-disciple relationship will suffice. There's no need for a formal apprenticeship ceremony. Yuan Dongji finished and took out her mobile phone to open WeChat, then said, come, let's add each other on WeChat. Shen Qinghan obediently took out her phone, opened her WeChat QR code for her to scan. After adding each other as friends, Shen Qinghan felt dazed, unsure of what she had just done. Despite knowing very little about Yuan Dongji, she had inexplicably accepted the other as her master. It was all so hasty. Shen Qinghan felt extremely frustrated inside, thinking she was too soft-hearted, being led by the nose from start to finish, never knowing how to refuse. Oh, besides you, I have another disciple. She entered the fold 10 years before you, but she is about your age, also a girl, you two should get along well. However, she is not currently here, and where she is, electronic devices can't be used. It's estimated that she won't be able to return for a while. I'll arrange for you two to meet when there's an opportunity. I have her picture on my phone, I'll send it to you so you can see what she looks like. As she spoke, Yuan Dongji sent a photo to Shen Qinghan over WeChat. Curious, Shen Qinghan clicked on the photo, and saw a tall girl of her age. The girl had snow-white hair, a stern look with an oppressive gaze in her eyes, and was holding a bloodied spear in her hand. At her feet lay an exotic beast, its body larger than an elephant, giving the image a striking impact. Shen Qinghan did not recognize the exotic beast in the photo, but she felt a strong sense of familiarity with the white-haired girl. The moment she saw her, memories from second grade of elementary school suddenly surged from the depths of her mind. Is this Bai Shui? Staring blankly at the girl in the photo, Shen Qinghan's face was filled with disbelief. P.S. Begging for monthly and recommendation tickets. Chapter 199, Luo Kyungsu? Bai Shui? What's wrong? Noticing the odd expression on Shen Qinghan's face, Yuan Dongji asked her with confusion. Master. Since it was a master she had acknowledged rather inexplicably, the way Shen Qinghan called out master sounded very unnatural and awkward. She took a moment before asking, that what's my senior sister's name? Luo Kyungsu. Yuan Dongji answered indifferently. Fearing Shen Qinghan might not know which three characters, Yuan Dongji also thoughtfully typed out Luo Kyungsu and sent it to her on WeChat to see. It wasn't Bai Shui, but the name contained the character for snow. Shen Qinghan felt that her senior sister might very likely be Bai Shui. Yuan Dongji asked, looking at the photo of your senior sister like that, did you know her before? When I was in the second grade of elementary school, there was a good friend named Bai Shui in my class, who looks a lot like my senior sister. After speaking, Shen Qinghan added, this good friend of mine had just transferred to our school not half a semester before she suddenly transferred away again, and since then, I've never seen her again. Yuan Dongji raised an eyebrow, is that so? Shen Qinghan hesitated for a moment before voicing her guess, Master, it's been exactly 10 years since I was in the second grade. Do you think could my senior sister be that good friend of mine? Impossible. Yuan Dongji directly denied it without even thinking. As for the reason, she did not explain. Shen Qinghan had a timid disposition and did not dare to ask further, she just silently looked at the photo again. It was only at that moment that she noticed something very off about the background of the photo. The plants growing on the ground were all strangely shaped. There was grass with black leaves and branches. There were trees with trunks covered in blood vessels. And there were eerie, enchanting flowers with mouths. The plants were very different from those known to her, seeming very fake, as if they had been altered in post-production. At this point, Yuan Dongji said, Qinghan, your genetic fusion compatibility is so high that it somewhat exceeds my understanding. How about this? I'll give you a full physical examination now to see if your body has any special characteristics that would give you such high compatibility. After speaking, Yuan Dongji stood up, walked in front of Shen Qinghan, sat down, and slid her hand inside her clothes to press on her lower abdomen. She then channeled a strand of her spiritual power into Shen Qinghan's body and began to carefully examine her. About 10 minutes later, Yuan Dongji frowned and withdrew her hand. Shen Qinghan's body was very normal, with no difference from an ordinary person. But that was strange. How could such an ordinary body have a genetic fusion compatibility as high as 21%? Yuan Dongji was baffled. Seeing her frown, Shen Qinghan thought there might be something wrong with her own body and immediately asked with some panic, Master, is there something wrong with my body? There's nothing wrong with your body, it's no different from an ordinary person's, and every part is quite normal, Yuan Dongji said, then continued with bewilderment, but it's precisely because it's too normal that it seems abnormal. Logically, a body with a genetic fusion compatibility of 21% shouldn't be this ordinary. After hearing this, Shen Qinghan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Just now, when Yuan Dongji suddenly frowned, the first thought that popped into her head was that she might have contracted some incurable disease. It was all because she had watched too many melodramatic idol dramas in the past, always thinking in terms of cliched plot lines. It's past 12 o'clock. Let's go, I'll take you to the canteen for lunch. My childhood friend is still waiting for me outside, can I bring him along? Of course. Soon, the two of them stood up and left the office. As they went out the door, with just a thought from Yuan Dongji, all the electronic equipment in the office, which had malfunctioned, returned to normal. When she had brought Shen Qinghan in earlier, she had used her spiritual power to shield all the electronic equipment in the office to prevent their conversation from being leaked. Once outside, Shen Qinghan waved at Lin Zikan and called out, "Xiao Chen, come on, let's go eat in the canteen." "Coming." Lin Zikan responded and stood up to walk over. On their way to the canteen, Yuan Dongji walked ahead. Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan followed behind. Yuan Dongji was wearing high heels that made a series of crisp, melodious sounds when they hit the ground, which, far from being noisy, sounded somewhat wonderful. Even more beautiful were her voluptuous, snow-white legs and the full, perky rear that swayed seductively under the silk fabric as she moved, extremely enticing. Walking behind her, Lin Zikan was already trying hard to control himself, but he still couldn't help glancing over several times. It just goes to show that humans, though far more rational than other creatures, often have their rationality consumed by desire. Before long, the three of them reached the cafeteria. After finding a spot to sit down, Yuan Dongji called over the head chef and turned to ask Shen Qinghan, "Qinghan, what would you like to eat?" "Just tell this chef. Anything is fine for me." Shen Qinghan was still a bit reserved at the moment, not daring to make demands on anyone. Seeing Shen Qinghan's somewhat introverted demeanor, Yuan Dongji turned to Lin Zikan, seated next to her, and said, "You are Qinghan's childhood friend and sweetheart who's grown up with her. You must know her well, so order some dishes she loves to eat." "Okay." Lin Zikan responded to Yuan Dongji and then told the chef in front of him, "Let's have tomato and egg stir-fry, soy braised chicken, soy braised shrimp, hand-torn cabbage, and carrot and corn stew. 4 dishes and 1 soup should be enough for 3 people to eat." In the time that followed, the three of them sat together, eating and chatting. During the conversation, when Lin Zikan found out that Shen Qinghan had taken Yuan Dongji as her mentor, he was flabbergasted. How did she suddenly get a mentor out of the blue? But he soon figured it out. He guessed it must be because Shen Qinghan's genetic fusion adaptability was so outstanding that she was destined for great things in the future, and Yuan Dongji was securing her support in advance. And Yuan Dongji, upon learning that Lin Zikan was the candidate with a whopping 15% adaptability in genetic fusion, was also stunned. This pair of childhood friends had actually clinched the top 2 spots in the Nanjiang Province Martial Arts exam? Wasn't that a bit too coincidental? Yuan Dongji keenly sensed that something was amiss. About an hour later, the three had their fill. Yuan Dongji arranged for someone to send Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan home. As soon as the two left, she notified her confidant to investigate their family backgrounds. She instructed a particular focus on Shen Qinghan's background to find out who could give birth to such a daughter with impressive physical quality. Her confidant was extremely efficient, and in less than an hour, had gathered all the family information about Lin Zikan and Shen Qinghan, sending it over to Yuan Dongji for review. After going through the information, Yuan Dongji grew even more puzzled. Their parents were all very ordinary, neither genetic integrators nor mechanically modified humans. So the question was, how did such ordinary parents give birth to children with such high talent? Could it be a genetic mutation? Yuan Dongji was completely at a loss. Next, she took out her phone and called her father at home. Her father, with his broad experience, might provide her with the answer she sought by telling him about this issue. Soon, the call connected, and a somewhat deep, middle-aged male voice came through. "What's the matter, Dongji?" "Dad, I've taken on a new apprentice today who has an extremely high talent, with a genetic fusion adaptability of 21%. What did you say?" A 21% genetic fusion adaptability? How is that possible? Quickly, tell me the details. An extremely shocked voice came from the other end of the phone. Yuan Dongji organized her thoughts and told her father about the situation, emphasizing that Shen Qinghan's parents were ordinary people. However, her well-experienced father was also encountering such an unreasonable situation for the first time and could not provide a definitive answer. He only suggested it might be a genetic mutation. After that, he instructed her in a very serious tone. Dongji, you must train this new genius apprentice well. With a genetic fusion adaptability as high as 21%, your genius apprentice will surely achieve greatness in the future, and the rewards we could gain from this are unimaginable. Also, don't let anyone know about your apprentice's terrifying talent. I understand, father.